Mr. Vice Chairman, we are now recording the meeting and streaming live to YouTube. You can begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Welcome to this Metro Plan Orlando TAC meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'm Vice Chairman Joshua DeVries, and I'll be chairing the meeting today as Chairman Bill Wharton is out on medical leave. Just as a reminder, since this meeting and our future meetings will be in person, it's important for all TAC members to attend our meetings in person in order for us to have a quorum. Members of the public will still be able to participate virtually, and we encourage them to do that. Yes, please participate and don't pretend. So I'll move on to chairman's announcements. There are 2 public comment points in the meeting. Members of the public attending in person who want to speak need to fill out a comment card and give it to Rachel. Those attending virtually who want to speak will use the raise hands feature on the Zoom screen. If attending by phone, you can hit *9 to raise your hand and request to be recognized. When you're called, your microphone will be temporarily unmuted by staff and will ask you to state your name and contact information for the record. We also accepted comments by email before this meeting. In addition, I'd like to thank Jason Learned and the FDOT functional classification team for their close coordination with each jurisdiction as we had comments for the functional classification updates, and they walked us through the updates, and we appreciate being based on existing conditions. I know it was a very educational and helpful for myself and other Osceola staff, and Jason and his team met with us. I'd like to also thank Alex Trauger for helping to explain some questions Osceola had about the PPL and TIP updates, which also helped us understand the process a little bit better. And with that, I'll hand the meeting back to Mr. Slade Downs for the agenda review.
Thank you, Josh. I would like to welcome everyone to the meeting as well. There is one change to the agenda. So on your agenda, there's only one tax-only presentation, but we do have a walk-on joining us today. Jason Learned from FDOT will be providing us another update on their functional classification program. So we'll be adding him as item 8B. And that is the end of the agenda changes, but I have a couple of staff announcements. First off, I wanted to kind of put it on everyone's radar that if you plan on attending our board meeting on July 12th, that starts early at 8 a.m. So pencil that into your calendars, and we will have lots of coffee at the ready for that early meeting. Second of all, I wanted to give a quick update on the ATP, the Active Transportation Plan, which has been making great strides identifying potential new active transportation facilities in the region that will support our evolving mobility needs through 2050. If we could, I think we have a slide for that, if we get that up. Building on the success of our workshop last fall, we reviewed the existing and planned bicycle and pedestrian facilities in your communities. We're planning a similar workshop at the August TAC meeting to help identify new facilities. The ATP team will have identified potential project opportunities, and they want your feedback to help assess the initial feasibility and community support for those potential new facilities in your community. And of course, if there are any TISMO members in the room, you're welcome to join for that workshop as well. And lastly, you may have noticed a new name in your inbox this month from us, Miss Rachel Frederick here at the board services desk has joined our staff and is quickly getting caught up to speed in her role as board services coordinator. She's replacing Kathy Goldfarb. Rachel will be your main board services contact for TAC related matters. So if you haven't had a chance to introduce yourself or say hi, please do so. And with that, I will turn it over to Rachel for attendance. Thanks.
Please say here or present when your name is called. Abadantuano,
Here.
Bates, Brock,
Here.
Carson, Cash, Castillero, Castro,
Here.
Chester,
Here.
Hambley for Cornelson, Coulon,
Present.
DeVries,
Here.
Doig,
Good morning. Here.
Ede, Elliot Moore, Friel, Gold, Hammer, Hardwick, Dredge, Payne, Kamal, Krug, Lim,
Here.
Moskowitz, O'Keefe,
Here.
Shwari for Allure,
Here.
Pullum, Richmond, Rigby, Sanders,
Here.
Sonorans,
Here.
Smith,
Present.
Stirk,
Here.
Sudemeyer,
Here.
Nelson for Wharton, Williams, Yeargain.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, that completes the roll call. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. We have 3 common presentations, which we will hear now, and 2 TAC only presentations later in the agenda. Please stand your nameplate on end to signal that you wish to ask a question, and we will recognize you at the end. The first presentation is Safe Streets and Roads for All by Alex Trauger, Metro Plan Orlando.
Good morning again. I'm filling in for Mike Wilson this morning, but I'll be providing a little bit or a brief status update on our Safe Streets and Roads for All federal discretionary grant. But moving forward, we are going to start referring to that as our Vision Zero action planning work. So this was the grant that's going to allow us to conduct regional, county, and local Vision Zero action plans. So we're going to start using that terminology as we kind of move forward, especially in future presentations. But a little bit about the grant, and we've talked about this at past presentations. We were awarded $3.79 million in federal discretionary funds. At our last board meeting 2 weeks ago, the board did approve the budget amendment and that added the local funds. So Metro Plan Orlando will be covering the required local match for that. So as we move forward, and I know I've had one-on-one discussions with many of you, we're really just looking for your time and talent as we move forward, your time and energies. We don't need that local kind of treasure cash transaction to occur. So we're hoping that streamlines some of the process, but really allows us to dive right into the work itself. We see it taking place, the regional and county level plans over the next really 10 to 18 months. There's a lot of core critical path work that's going to occur, but there's a lot of follow-up monitoring, the continued public engagement and other buy-in that's going to be necessary. So it's going to be a longer timeline, in a long road ahead of us, as we all know. But there's a lot of critical path items that we're going to address, and we'll talk more at future presentations about getting us ready for that next NOFA for an implementation money. So while the focus is on developing a meaningful Vision Zero action plan, we have our eyes on the prize, and we want to make sure that we can lean in to those federal discretionary monies for additional behavioral change possibility funding, but also for the infrastructure solution monies that'll be made available next year. A little also on the status, so our board did approve the local funds, and we also did receive the green light from USDOT. We have a fully executed grant agreement, and that really allows us to push to push go come July 1. So with that, we're going to be kicking off the regional level Vision Zero action plan in July. And this work's going to provide the foundation, a lot of the toolkitting, develop a lot of the synergies necessary to help streamline the county and local plans. But we will be developing a regional task force to steer this work. We're going to be leaning into our vulnerable user safety working group, elevating that group and broadening the participation from that as well to include other what I would classify as non-traditional participants in our planning process. So folks from economic development, from the hospitals, from other community organizations representing different demographics and age groups. So we want to make sure we have a really cross-sectoral but very diverse group, because the solutions ahead of us and the problems that we have are really going to require that diverse set of minds to get us to Vision Zero. So we'll be establishing that task force soon. But if you've been participating on that vulnerable users group, count yourselves in. But as TAC members, as TISMO members, you will also be involved in every step of the way as part of the regional plan development. So if you're not on that group, no worries. You're still going to have direct participation in your role as a technical advisory committee member, and also in your local roles in developing the local plans that are going to kind of feed up into the regional plan. A really robust public engagement plan and campaign is a part of the regional plan. We will be developing a consistent brand, developing different types of toolkits, media toolkits, just some starter graphics kits. So to streamline as much of that as easy as possible, to make it kind of easy on your communications teams and the other folks back at your agencies. So it's a very robust public engagement campaign, digital and traditional means we see taking place. That data collection is going to be core to the work. Identifying a high injury network is essential in a Vision Zero action plan. So we're going to be leaning into the data. Other works that we've done, our speed management analysis and other safety works. We'll be developing collision profiles to really understand what are the issues and how can we solve for those. As part of the policy analysis, we'll look at our policies, our procedures, our protocols, how we do business. Can those things change to better improve safety? We'll be looking at ourselves, kind of looking in the mirror at Metro Plan Orlando, and as part of the local works as well, digging into your comp plans, land development code, other ordinances. How can those be advanced, improved to better solve for safety? That's a really critical element. Identifying projects, I mentioned kind of on the front end, that's going to be critical. How do we solve for safety? What those projects will look like will come out of the high injury network, out of those collision profiles, but we'll be developing projects, both infrastructure, but also other types of behavioral and educational change, because we know that's going to be key to getting us to zero. So that's going to be a critical element of the comprehensive action planning process. Tracking progress is going to be a long road to zero, unfortunately, given our situation. So continued monitoring is going to be part of that process, and we're going to be building that into kind of a monitoring plan. At the end of the day, we'll be adopting this as a comprehensive regional Vision Zero action plan, where our board will adopt that via resolution, committing to Vision Zero by a specific year. So with that, this is intended to be a quick update, knowing that at each of your technical advisory committee meetings coming forward, you're going to get a kind of a larger dose of this more specifically, especially as we're talking key milestones. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have. Thank you for your time.
Do we have any questions?
Over here, I think I'm in your blind
Oh,
spot.
yeah.
Hey, Alex, thank you for the update. I'm curious when you're talking about broadening the vulnerable users working group. When we first established that, there was a lot of talk about the intention of that group being hyper-focused on municipalities and our sort of long-range planning effort and safe speeds, and concern about the overlap between Best Foot Forward committees and community traffic safety teams. Same people in a lot of these groups, redundant meetings. So how does moving towards a broader coalition on that task force, how are you mitigating those same concerns?
Yeah, I still see there, there is some interplay there. There's a lot of meetings. We don't have too many of them. So I recognize that. The broadening, I don't think would be too or overburdening to those who are already participating on community traffic safety teams and others. So the county level plans that will be developed, I see leaning heavier into the community traffic safety teams, given the participation at the county level. But for the regional plan, we see participation from the economic partnership, from AARP to address the elderly population. We're looking to get a UCF student to really give that feedback and insights as it relates to the younger generation. You'll hear more from Lorraine later, where our some of our most critical challenges are. So bringing someone in from there, from law enforcement. For the regional plan, we're considering the Florida Highway Patrol, given that, for the regional plan, a lot of those crashes and the response to those crashes is being done by the Florida Highway Patrol. At the county and city level plans, obviously that law enforcement participation can change to sheriff and police departments appropriately. We're also going to be bringing in, folks from the Safety Council who already participate on the Vulnerable User Safety Working Group. But members from our Community Advisory Committee, Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board, as well as, select members from TAC and TISMO are also going to be identified for that regional plan. So I'm aware of the many meetings associated with safety, but this is also a critical element to developing our plan. And we're for the task force, we're looking at up to 5 virtual meetings. So I don't see the burden or overly burdensome. Obviously some prep work in advance, coming prepared for those 90-minute milestone meetings, but well aware of some of the interplay between all of the other safety coalitions and in committees of sorts. So absolutely.
Any other questions? All right, well, now thank you, Alex. And moving on to the next presentation, we've got FDOT Focus on Distracted Driving by Ms. Lorraine Bobo with FDOT.
Very good. Good morning. As he said, my name is Lorraine Bobo. I'm the District 5 Safety Administrator for FDOT. And before I get into distracted driving, I wanted to share a little bit about where we've been over the last 2 years. Our Office of Safety was created June of 2021. So we just celebrated our 2-year anniversary. And, when I started giving presentations for what we were doing, I kept talking about our focus on safety. And I quickly changed to our refocus on safety, because we've always focused on safety, but we really needed to, with all the deaths going on, we really needed to refocus on that safety. So I wanted to share a little bit today about what we've been going through. So today, 8 people will have woken up, had breakfast with their family, and they won't go home because of a crash that occurred somewhere in our state. This is happening on state roads, local roads. They plan on going to dinner with their family and they didn't make it there, and they didn't deserve that. Another 49 will be seriously injured, their lives affected forever. This is why we have a refocus on safety. So in the Metro Plan area, we have 318 fatalities in 2021. Presentation seems different than Wednesday. Is it the same one? I'm sorry. 33% of them are people walking or biking, speeding and aggressive driving, lane departures and intersections are our biggest issues. This is happening everywhere in our counties. So the safe system approach is this idea comes down from FHWA, and this idea that there's a lot of different things that kind of play into getting us to zero. Yes, we can do things with our infrastructure to make them safer, but we also need to improve behaviors. We also need to improve our vehicles and things like that to get to zero. This is not, no.
We did not get the right presentation in the slide deck.
I apologize.
I did notice the cover said 2022, so I don't know if you accidentally swapped them.
My bad.
So while they're doing that, I'll just kind of share some things that we've been working on over the last 2 years. While infrastructure is very important to the department and we are touching every single project to put in the countermeasures that we would like to do to improve that safety, which is really getting the speed down to the speed that we want people to be traveling on that roadway through those infrastructure improvements. If the speed limit's 35, we want them to drive 35 and not feel comfortable driving any faster than that. So that's where we put in chicanes and speed tables and landscaping and all of those different things to influence that. That's the infrastructure side. And we're, like I said, we're touching every project. But in most crashes, a contributing factor is behavior. So we are also pushing a big effort for beyond infrastructure. How can we affect those behaviors on the road? This looks a lot better, thank you. Yes. Thank you, apologize for that.
Is this the?
That's perfect, yep.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. So, so back to the presentation. Maybe. Very good. The safe system approach. Like I said, this is that wholesome effort looking at all of these different things that we can do, all those little things, all those big things to get us to zero. So you heard Alex mentioning Vision Zero, but you also see FDOT's Target Zero. Yes, their names are a little bit different, but at the end of the day, they have the same goal: zero fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. Vision Zero is an international term, national term, local term that many municipalities adopt. And I believe that's going to be part of the effort with what Alex was talking about. FDOT's Target Zero is kind of that all of those different programs and initiatives that we have going on to get to zero. So these are the Vision Zero partners that we have in our 9 counties in District 5. As we mentioned on Wednesday, hopefully next time you see this slide, the logos will be a little bit different, a little bit smaller, because we have so many more municipalities and communities that have adopted Vision Zero. As I mentioned, in most crashes, a contributing factor is behavior. You know, folks are distracted, they're driving drowsy, they're driving under the influence, they're speeding. You know, we can build the best roads, but if someone's on their phone and not paying attention, you know, the roadway can't help that. So distracted driving. Distracted driving is anything that takes your hands off the wheel, your eyes off the wheel, and you're not just driving. So we most of the time think about texting, but it can also be doing other things in the car. You're talking to your kids in the back seat, you're picking your next podcast, anything that's just not really focused ahead and kind of paying attention to what's going on around you. In 2019, the wireless communications while driving law did go into effect as a primary, as a secondary offense. So to a primary offense, yeah. That's just texting. So, you know, if you were doing something else, I don't know that it's necessarily against the law, but that doesn't mean that you're being the most responsible driver out there. There is an initiative to go to completely hands-free in the state of Florida. So doing anything, you're looking up something on Amazon, that would you know, now be a primary offense. So we'll see how that goes. So in Florida, last year in 2022, 30 drivers 30 and under made up 40% of our distracted driving related crashes. 40 and under made up 30%. Across the state, we had over 1,000 distracted driving crashes in our state in a week, every single week. And that's, I drive from Altamont to DeLand every day, and I see people all the time on their phones, and they're not paying attention. They're driving distracted. And so in 2022 in Florida, we lost 271 people. District 5, we lost 90 people. In the 3 counties at Metro Plan Orlando area, we lost 50 people. So over 50% of our distracted driving fatalities. And that's likely due to the populations in those areas are more dense than our other counties. They're just very busy counties. I will like to mention that these are, when we look at our reports, these are reported distracted driving, right? So it has to kind of be proven that that somebody involved in that crash was actually driving distracted, whatever that may be. So we do believe that this goes very, very unreported. So those numbers are probably higher if you had to attribute it to distracted driving. So in Metro Plan Orlando area, last year we had over 15,000 crashes, 499 people were seriously injured, and as I mentioned earlier, 50 people died. So this is a very preventable thing, right? So all of those people would not have been injured. Those people that died would still be with us. So who's involved in these crashes? So we just took the crash reports from the Metro Plan Orlando area. You'll notice in the middle there that ages 25 to 34 is our highest number, but it's happening across the board, right? It's not just that group. Where did they live? They're our neighbors, they're our friends. They live in these 3 counties mostly, or within Florida, which could be Volusia County, could be our neighboring counties. So the amount involved in these crashes of locals is the majority. This chart, I'll just say, remember back what I said, that the officer has to have confirmed that it was a distracted driving case and what the distraction was. So this chart, the biggest piece of the pie is unknown. So there was something to indicate that there was a distraction, but they couldn't really pinpoint. The point of showing this is that there's a lot of different things that can distract you. Where is this happening? It's happening everywhere. It's happening on state roads, local roads, interstates, toll roads, county roads. So there's not just one place that folks are doing this. So it just so happens in the month of June, we have been running a campaign. Hopefully you've maybe seen the videos on YouTube or TV, billboards, radio, maybe at the gas station pump. So the central office has put about $1 million into that very directed campaign to distracted driving. It is aiming to influence those young male drivers ages 22 to 27. We've done quite a few focus groups, and this is that age group that are involved in most of those crashes. To supplement that media, we have also been hosting community outreach events throughout the district and doing social media and things like that. But we've also brought in our law enforcement partners so that if they do see somebody that is maybe, on their phone, they're sharing literature and not just a ticket. So like I mentioned, we've been doing these focus groups with this age group, these males 22 to 27. And what they're telling us is that they know the laws, but they behave otherwise. They feel that need to be connected. Oh, God, I need to know who just texted me. I need to know who just called me. They're very confident in their driving. They want to be controlled and admired. They do not want to be told what to do. Anybody that has children might be like, but they do still respect with their parents and grandparents, and they have influence over them. So when they see those ads, while they are intended for that male 22 to 27, they're also intended for the folks that might influence those individuals. So almost exactly a month ago, on May 31st, we did a kickoff event, and we had 5 TV stations attend, 1 print media. They shared 52 stories in the first 24 hours. And I know I've seen some after that with over 9 million views. So this is not the earned this is earned media. This is not what we actually paid for. So this was phenomenal. It just so happens that this morning we did a very similar event, but it was going into the July 4th holiday weekend. And we actually had 6 TV stations, 7 show up this morning. So I've been up since 3:30 a.m. Been doing interviews since 5 a.m. So it's been a busy morning for me. But it's all worth it because we're getting that message out. You know, I could come speak to folks like yourself, but if 7 different stations are sharing it, you know, message is getting out there even further. Folks in Metro Plan Orlando did get to join us on May 31st, and we really appreciated that. So this is just a little bit of the paid media where those billboards are. This has been going across our district. And, you know, we're really hoping that folks will see this. They've seen it multiple times. It'll really sink in that, you know what, I do need to put that do not disturb, use that do not disturb feature on my phone. These are just the list of the events that we held over the course of the month. And some of these were just already planned when we decided to focus on distracted driving, but many of them we added them in. For example, June 19th, we went to the Orlando Sportsplex in Maitland. There's a lot of males 22 to 27 that go to work out there. So we greeted them as they came in, and we really encouraged them to use do not disturb. And the Sportsplex partnered with us in that if you went in and completed a survey and said, yes, I use do not disturb now. Yes, I set my playlist before I go, whatever the questions were. They offered up a gift certificate. Actually, it was occurring this week, the drawing. So it's partnerships like that we can just continue to reach more and more people. So what can you do? First, just don't drive distracted. I know it's something that I have to kind of work at. It's very easy to, you know, oh, my podcast ended. Let me click another one now. Now I'm taking my eyes off the road. I'm pushing buttons on my screen. And so I really have to I'm going to be fine with whatever comes up next, you know. We put out a lot of social media posts. So, you know, your agencies can share those. We've got raw material that we'd be happy to share. You know, while we're obviously doing a focus this month, you can share this message, you know, really anytime. And then I encourage you to personally use do not disturb on your phone. Almost everybody's phone has a do not disturb function already in their phone. So there are apps that you can download, but you don't have to download anything new. So, and it's something you have to, it's, you know, the idea of a habit, right? You have to do it multiple times to really get into that habit. But is that text worth your life or somebody else's? So I'll just end with a safety second because it takes just a second to be safe. You know, please set your do not disturb, or at least consider that, and encourage your family members to do so as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. Are there any questions?
And you guys are a lot quieter than the CAC. I appreciate the time.
All right.
Oh.
All right, I'm gonna click over here.
Lorraine, the newer cars have bigger and bigger screens right in the middle of the console. Is that a concern? Or
it is something that we have talked about, right? It's almost like your phone might go, it can't do anything on your phone, but now you're doing everything here. I agree. I think it's that too is a distraction.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, Lorraine,
you
for the
very much.
presentation. And moving on to the next item is FDOT State Road 426 Coalition Process Update by Mark Tribbets with FDOT.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Trebitz. I'm with the Florida Department of Transportation in the Planning and Environmental Management Office. And I'm here today to talk to you about the State Road 426 Coalition. I think the PowerPoint will be there in a second or two. But this coalition project goes from west of Park Avenue to north of Lakemont Avenue in Winter Park. There we go. Okay. All right. So first I wanted to start out with what is a coalition, because it is kind of a new planning function that we have. Coalitions are formed to evaluate transportation solutions and develop concepts for potential improvements that can be incorporated into a roadway maintenance project. So those maintenance projects are resurfacing projects, also known as 3R projects. We resurface our roads per statute to keep them at a certain health every 12 to 15 years. This gives us a great opportunity due to some recent changes to our design manuals that we can do spot safety improvements on those projects. So we can leverage resurfacing dollars to do safety improvements in maintenance projects. So it's really a great thing. We're able to touch our roads more frequently with safety items than we would have previously. Something else unique about a coalition, not only is it paired with an upcoming known 3R, is that it's more community centric, and a major part of it not only is the preliminary engineering, but to engage the local community and partner with them in identifying issues and needs and coming up with some of those solutions that the community can really get behind and be proud of a project in their area because they were a part of it. Another key advantage of a coalition, because it's paired with a known resurfacing, is that it is funded both for design and for construction. And it has a timeline to when we're going to get to that construction. It's not just a study that we're studying. It is a project that we are quickly leading into design phase and then going straight into construction. With that being said, because it's a resurfacing project, there is no right-of-way phase. Our resurfacings are on our state roads, which are in our right-of-way. So the projects don't have a right-of-way phase or right-of-way funding program. So that is a limitation. We can't do improvements outside of the right-of-way. But it does give us that advantage of getting to the construction much quicker. Right-of-way is usually a 2-year phase, so we can go from design 1.5 years straight into construction. So it has a quicker timeline as well. All right, so when we start, we identify a project visioning team, because coalitions are very much a partnership with our local community stakeholders. So that visioning team is made up of people that are in that community. We start with our government partners, the city, county, TPO, as well as some of the locals that live, work, and commute through there. So we had Advent Health in this case, Winter Park High School, the Chamber of Commerce, we had the Rollins College, and we had, it's kind of unique, we had an advocacy group that is made up of people that live in the area called Fix 426, and we've partnered with them pretty heavily on this project. Lots of meetings, getting their input and feedback, not only on the issues and needs, but some of the solutions that we're proposing. And the main goal of that visioning team is to help guide in the identification of those issues and needs, as well as the solutions. All right, so getting into the study corridor, in the west, it starts at Park Avenue, and in the east, it is North Lakemont Avenue. It's kind of a unique corridor. It's not really in a grid pattern. It's not straight, has a lot of curvature due to the lakes in the area. It has residential on it. It has commercial, so different types of users, as well as it has a lot of people commuting from the east side of the area to the west side getting to I-4, or east to the west getting to I-4. The existing typical section is 4 lanes with some turn lanes here or there throughout. Those lanes are typically 11 feet. There are some 9-foot lanes, even where there are turn lanes, specifically in the Hinkle-Trisman area of the corridor. There's also existing 5-foot sidewalk along the corridor with curb and gutter, and the DOT's right-of-way is right against the back of the sidewalk. So we are kind of in a very tight corridor in terms of fitting in safety improvements, but the team has done a great job getting creative to, as you see when we get to the concepts, fitting in a lot of safety. All right, so with every study, PD&E, or coalition now, we start with a purpose and need and goal. And the goal of this maintenance project is to rehabilitate the pavement, because it is a maintenance project. And while we're also incorporating improvements within the existing right-of-way that will increase safety and safe travel along the corridor for all users. The coalition is evaluating a variety of factors, including safety, pedestrian and bicycle mobility, speed management, and traffic operation improvements. So with that PVT, we start with them first with issues and needs identification. We don't go straight to solutions. We try and keep an open mind with those users that know the corridor best. They tell us the issues and needs, and then we go and do the engineering team a corridor and safety analysis, field review, go out and look at the existing geometry and features, how the corridor is used, and the crash reports as well. And the data here on this slide is showing some of that crash information. And from 2017 to 2022, which was the latest at the time of the start of this coalition, there was 629 crashes, and the most frequent being rear-end crashes, side swipes, lane departures, and distracted driving. A key issue that was identified by both the PVT and confirmed by the analysis was that speeding is a key issue out here on the corridor. We put a speed monitoring sign installed between the curves, so between Brewer's Curve in the east and that western curve where the speed limit is 25. It was found that there's speeds of 10 to 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, so 25 there, and it's 30 on either side of the curves existing. So speeding a key issue identified. Other main issues besides speeding identified by the PVT and the coalition engineering team: speeding, lane departures, lack of bike ped crossings, bike ped mobility, and difficulty turning into and out of side streets and driveways. So this project lends very well to follow Lorraine's presentation, because we very much embrace the safe systems approach and in working on changing that driver behavior. Find those issues and needs, and we go to solutions through these principles of directly addressing those issues. The solutions being proposed follow that safe systems approach to utilize engineering and speed management techniques to change driver behavior so they are more engaged while driving, and ultimately reduce crashes and the severity of those crashes if and when they occur. And we do this not just by changing a sign, it is through engineering elements on the road, through engagement. There are redundant, frequent roadway elements implemented that make the driver feel they need to be paying attention. There's things changing around them. They shouldn't be looking down at their phone. Through enclosure, road items or landscaping are close to the roadway to create that visual friction. They feel uncomfortable to go faster than the speed limit posted. They'll feel comfortable going what everyone else is going, which should be the correct posted speed. It's not open, it's not straight. Deflection, road geometry elements changing horizontally or vertically, chicanes, that serpentine motion in the road geometry, or raised intersections or speed tables. So we've talked about the issues and needs and the principles of how we're going to get to our solutions. So we grouped, as I said, the solutions very directly to the issues that we're trying to solve: speed reduction, curve safety, so those lane departures, the bike ped, transit safety and mobility, and turning movement safety, either on 426 mainline or the side streets. So these buckets I'm going to go through with the concept up on the board so you can see kind of where they are. And we call these visuals icon maps. They're a little bit easier to digest than the normal engineering concepts. And we've used these a lot in these coalition projects when you're working with the public a lot. It's a lot easier to digest where these elements are going to be and kind of move them around and find the appropriate locations. We developed two alternatives, and we presented those to the PVT and the community in a community event, which is similar to our DOT public meeting, which are open house style, where we do a presentation and then we have our boards out for questions and getting that community feedback and input. So there's two alternatives, and it's not necessarily we're going to go with alt 1 or alt 2. It's that there are features in each that are different, and we'll take the community feedback as well as engineering discretion to come to that ultimate recommended alternative. And the features in each can kind of be mix and match, so it's not one or the other. So alternative 1 has features that are more vertical in nature, with the goal of slowing speeds and changing driver behavior. So shown in this concept here is raised intersections at about 5 of the intersections, pedestrian crossings, which would be raised crosswalks with pedestrian hybrid beacons. We're showing 7 potential locations. At this time, we wanted to show more locations to get the community's feedback on where they would be most effective and most used. Speed tables, narrow medians to prevent lane departures, dynamic curve system lighting to emphasize the curves at night, a concrete barrier to replace the guardrail and the curve. So that barrier would now be in between the sidewalk and the road, so on the curb line, to help protect those most vulnerable users. Tightening side street curb returns, so there's shorter pedestrian crossing lengths, as well as slowing speeds of the vehicles that are turning from the main line to the side streets. We're proposing pavement markings to show posted speed, in-lane decals to emphasize the turn or curve approaching, internally illuminated raised pavement markings in some of the curves along the corridor, And we're also showing at Phelps, addition of a turn lane from 426 onto Phelps. But because of that tight corridor to fit in a turn lane, we have to narrow to 9-foot lanes. So far, as we've been going through this engagement, we've been getting mostly comments not in favor of those narrow lanes. They do want a turn lane, but they don't want to have those narrow lanes. So based on that feedback, we'll be taking that out of the recommended, and that's where we're in right now, that stage of taking in that feedback and coming up with the final concept. And that one, just this week, based on input, we'll be removing it from the recommended. Our coalition also, like a lot of our studies, recommends long-term solutions. It may not be able to work with this project, mostly because of needing right-of-way, but we did identify 2 long-term potential improvements, such as a roundabout at the Chase Ollie area, as well as an additional southbound turn lane at North Lakemont Avenue. And those need right-of-way, so it can't be done within this project, but we still identify them for any future project that comes along. All right, so we have alternative 2 here, which the features are more horizontal in nature, with the goal also of slowing speeds and changing driver behavior. So we're showing here chicaning of the road. So that's that serpentine road geometry. Enhanced bus stop markings. We're working with Links to consolidate or relocate some of their bus stops to align with the proposed pedestrian crossings to help get those crossings to be used. The pedestrians are coming from the buses. Makes sense to align them. Removal of the slip lane at Chase. Some different locations for pedestrian crossings than the previous alternative. Narrow medians, different locations of those narrow medians, and they're used more frequently in this alternative 2, as well as rumble strips. Common to alternative 1 are also raised intersections, dynamic curve system lightings, tightening those side street returns, pavement markings to show the proposed speed, in-lane decals to emphasize the turn or curve ahead, as well as pedestrian barrier in the curves. That was very much favored by the locals. So it's definitely proposed. All right, in these next 3 slides, we have 3D renderings kind of showing the existing and the proposed, kind of a before and after, showing the dramatic transformation that's going along in the corridor. And so this image here is showing 426 looking east to Hinkle Circle. And this is showing one of the raised bike ped crossings, which has a transition, a flat table. D5 actually uses its own standard detailing for these raised tables. We actually have a longer table to accommodate bus and emergency and fire, so they don't have to deal with their axles being possibly straddling the table. And when going the posted speed, which it's gentle, you don't feel it as much. When you're going fast, you do feel that bump. These are things that we're starting to implement around the District 5. Not too far from here, OBT, just south of I-4 to Holden Avenue. We have several of these in place. And so you can go out and drive them and feel how they are when you're driving. Also showing this image is an overhead pedestrian hybrid signal, which is pedestrian actuated. So when the pedestrian hits the signal, the red comes on and they can cross, stopping traffic, making it a much safer crossing. It's also showing the enhanced pavement markings to enhance the visibility of the crosswalk, as well as the pavement markings to show the posted speed. And it's also showing the raised narrow medians to have that lane separation. Again, this is just one of the potential locations that we're still evaluating. Next slide here is Brewer's Curve, which is the eastern curve. And this shows the narrow medians. For that lane separation. We do get a lot of lane departures here, both crossover into oncoming traffic, as well as to the outside vehicles leaving the roadway altogether. So we have that concrete barrier now that's replacing the guardrail. The concrete barrier is right on the curb line, separating the vehicles and the sidewalk. It's also showing the dynamic curve system to emphasize the curve. This rendering here is 426 at Shepherd Avenue, and it's showing an example of a raised intersection. So again, kind of like the speed table, it has that gentle transition when going the appropriate speed, and a much longer table because that's the actual full intersection. It has the potential to be stamped or colored at the intersection as it's shown, and it will have high emphasis pavement markings and in pavement speed warning markings, as well as there's a PHB shown in this rendering nearby the intersection. All right, so getting into the next steps of this project and the timeline. Like I talked about, we had the community event 1 on June 13th, where we presented these 2 alternatives. Right now, we're developing that final recommended alternative, aggregating those comments that we got from the PVT as well as at the public meeting. And we'll be developing a final recommended solution there, or a final recommended alternative. And we'll be taking it back to our PVT as well as our community event, so that public meeting style event. And that'll be September timeframe. From there, we'll be wrapping up the report, handing it to design. They'll be starting design end of 2023, and then design is funded, and we have construction anticipated for fiscal year 26, starting near the end of 2025, when construction is also funded. All right, so last slide here, I have project manager's contact information, Jesse Bluen. We also have the project website as well as handouts over there that show the alternatives and timeline and some of the information about the project if you want to look into it further. Like I said, we also have our project that has all this information as well as everything that's presented at the public meetings. And one last thing I wanted to kind of hit on with this group that I don't with the other groups is a lot of you have been reached out to our scoping group, Celine Bounds, Eric Brule. They've been getting with you because we start to scope our resurfacing projects that are coming up. A coalition like this is kind of our more robust projects where we're adding a lot more safety features, but most all of our projects are having some sort of features like this. There'll be, whatever it might be, the vertical elements, the horizontal elements. So we're pairing those safety items with our resurfacing. And we've been reaching out to a lot of you doing these community visioning meetings to identify those issues and needs, your vision for the area, future development that we can consider when looking at our resurfacing, so we can consider that when looking at these spot safety features. So just wanted to bring that up. And like, this is kind of one of the first projects coming to fruition in this 2-year process that's been going on as it takes to get through the scoping to getting into design. So just wanted to bring all that up with all of you. And with that, I can open it up to questions.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions? Over there, Hardwick, I believe, was first.
Yeah, so I have a lot of questions, but I'll save some for Jesse. But my main question is, so since it doesn't look like you're expanding the sidewalks or adding any bikeways as part of this project, has there been coordination with the local, with the larger property owners like my alma mater, Rollins, or the municipalities on off-corridor bicycle and pedestrian connections? I know there are a lot of private streets in this area that if small connections were made could really create that east-west connectivity for our active transportation.
In terms of off system, some of that has come up in conversation. What we have been talking with the locals, that's one of the things that they really want is wider sidewalks, or at least some sort of buffer. Because we can't go outside the right of way, that conversation's gone to, it needs to go to a kind of a larger project, because there would be right of way acquired, some sort of a larger master plan or PD&E would need to be done for something like that. But it has come up, nothing too major, but that would be the kind of that next step now. This is that identifying some of the needs and issues that can't be done within this project. And now we would be going into that, talking about if there is some longer term solution.
To clarify, I meant shorter term local road connection, identifying those routes. Like with our Robinson Street resurfacing, there's a section where we're not able to put a bike lane. So we have a local sort of parallel route that we've identified.
It's something definitely we can bring up. I mean, we are partnering with Metro Plan and City, County. So, we're all in the room there. So it could be something discussed.
Is there another? All right.
Question for you. Obviously, you've stated that you can't do anything that would require right of way at this particular point in time because it's resurfacing.
You don't speak into the mic, the people online do not hear.
I'm sorry, I won't look at you while I ask
I think
the
it's back.
question.
Yeah, that's the other rule.
And I'm not trying to be rude.
Mhm.
So my question is, obviously that's been a huge issue here in Central Florida, that curve up there by Alberta. And obviously you can't do anything with that now because of it would require right of way. But has there been talks about straightening that a little bit so it's not as sharp? And I'm really surprised that Fix 426 group hasn't hammered you about that as an option. And obviously it's limited there with the lakes, but has that been a discussion?
In terms of changing the geometry, not really, but we've definitely very heavily partnered with Fix 426 and worked with them on the issues and needs that they see out in the corridor. It is sharp for Florida roads. It really hasn't come up as one of the issues out there.
Go ahead.
You think?
Morning, thank you. With such a tight corridor, have you run into having to have waivers, or have you run into you can't use standard design features, like the separator is not 2 feet, we're gonna have to do 1.5 feet, or some, items like that where you're not adhering to the standard details. Have you run into that, and how do you handle it?
Right. So yeah, the department has a variation exception process to if we have criteria that states a certain distance or spacing that we can, through engineering judgment and good reason, change that. For the most part, we've been successful in terms of getting very creative. Most of the time, if we're fitting in a mast arm for a PHB, we're able to narrow the lane and move that curb line, or even kind of eat into the gutter pan to fit some of these features. For the most part, we haven't really identified many variations we would need. The only potential one would be that I know of at this time would be for the raised intersections. Generally, they're supposed to be 25 miles an hour, but we'll have them at 30 miles an hour. It's something that statewide you can get a variation for in the right case. So, yep, we're exploring that.
Yes, I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Cash, and then.
Okay, right.
All right.
I have a project going on. It's a little bit further along than this one. To answer your question, we have an issue with Auto Train where they stack up out onto 46. The stacking can be about a half mile long when they're queuing cars to go in. They accommodated a stacking lane in their design that actually goes over a bridge. Which would not be a standard design detail. We also got 2 very needed signalization locations. So I think this is a outstanding format to get some safety improvements. Thank you.
Thank you.
Humberto?
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. I think that this is a game changer in terms of just how do we look at safety. I guess that my question to you, we do have a roadway surface program. We are going with our Vision Zero, and part of the aha moment of recognition is that for us to be able to implement safety, we need to have all the existing transportation projects or programs under the Vision Zero umbrella. So when we look at a project, if that is a 3R project, safety is going to be of paramount importance in terms of understanding those elements, and then we can go into the extension of the pavement life and some other things that are part of the roadway. So my question is, budgeting is key.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when do you develop your budget? Because I used to work for the DOT, so I know that you have some, as part of your assessment for the projects and the 3R, already you have certain key design features and then you estimate it. But how does this impact? And the other thing is, dollars or cost should not be an issue, but what is the difference in cost? So then we can tell and say, this is the justification, and based on a benefit to cost ratio, because I do think that you need to have your data and your crash reduction factors. So how do you approach it in terms of the safety, before and after studies, the crash reduction factor, the benefit to cost ratio, so then you can present this information. And the last thing is that when you are interjecting other things other than signal intersection improvements, which I think that is the right thing to do when you have your vertical deflections and your horizontal deflections. In some of these corridors, the idea before will be just to have the throughput. So now that we know that it's going to be more of a safety related, how do we convey that message? Specifically, are you going to be looking at corridors that you're doing this signal optimization, perhaps to go ahead and to retrofit them and see if another intersection option perhaps is a much better approach for safety?
All right, lots to unpack there. So first question was kind of how we program the funding
Yeah.
with all of our 3Rs, especially when we have a coalition, when we know we're going to have probably more spot safety improvements. We're kind of taking a little bit different approach since we've kind of gone into the smart scopes, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. We do our detailed scope after we've met with you all, the community visioning team, which a lot of you are on. We then do a detailed scope and a detailed hour estimate for design, as well as an LRE construction estimate. So based on that specific scope at the time and some of the proposed safety improvements that the team is identifying, knowing that we may have changes or additions in design, we also now are doing a lot more data analytics, looking back at historical costs, both for design and construction. And we're basing a lot of those decisions in terms of what percentage or bucket more should we have for safety outside of the resurfacing and the FDM changes. So we're looking at context, it's a lot based on context class, kind of which corridors we're looking at, like an A1A, that's going to need a little bit more percentage just because there's always more safety items that are going to be needed on a corridor like that. So we're doing it more data driven while still having that detail as a backup and kind of looking between the two as which one makes more sense for the project in terms of how much we're going to program. Second question, I believe, was on intersections being potential in this case compared to the other safety features we're showing. Intersections was something that the PVT brought up early on. We looked into that. We looked at several of the intersections. We looked at the warrants, and they just didn't meet the warrants in terms of the traffic that would be using those intersections, the crashes. And when they did meet the crash warrant, those crashes weren't correctable by signal. So it was something that we did look at a lot in this project.
Okay, thank you.
It's a very popular presentation. I'm not sure who went first, so I'll just start with Shad and Aaron, and then over to Kelly.
I'll try to keep quick. One of the things I noticed on your Brewer's curve, you were adding the barrier wall, which I thought was interesting. But I didn't think there was a lot of space from the back of curb over to that railing. Is that an issue? I mean, is there extra right of way behind that? You're able to widen that sidewalk out? Is there still need for, I don't know if there's still need for handrail or anything. I was just kind of wondering a little bit more detail on that.
We actually have a little bit of right of way clip there to kind of keep that ADA for the sidewalk, luckily.
Okay. Yeah,
it worked out.
I was kind of curious because I thought it was really tight.
Yeah.
Even though I sometimes wish they would do stuff like this more often versus making it a pedestrian sandwich through the curve. The other thing, I like this coalition. We kind of had a project in Longwood that they're going through. We didn't do the coalition part, but they've done the safety improvements. They have some right of way to make U-turns and so forth. So, but I see you have the PVT meetings. So I think on our project, I'll have to talk to somebody, I guess, to try to get these PVTs. That's kind of a different thing.
Mhm.
So did you say you had good participation in those? Did you have a lot of people?
This project, yes, a lot.
Okay.
I
Was
think
it
we had 100
individual owners, like people, residents, or was it more there's a number of businesses, the college is there?
This is a bigger PVT. I mean, the locals are very passionate about this project. And that's how it attracted us to use a coalition style in this, because we didn't want to just get to the 3R and say, here's what we're doing. We wanted to make sure that everyone felt involved and had, input. But yeah, the PVT is rather large. Like I said, we have that fixed 426 group, which is a lot of the local residences.
Okay.
And we think we had 160 plus people at the public meeting, 60 virtual.
That's a lot.
It's a good time.
That's really good. Okay. Thank you very much.
Aaron?
Hi, thank you. Just got a quick question about how you determine which roadway resurfacing projects necessitate a coalition, and how does a local municipality advocate for there being a coalition in preparation for a resurfacing project?
Sure. It's a relatively new thing we're doing, so that's a definitely understandable question. We kind of pair the coalitions, with resurfacing projects. They are on that 12 to 15 year timeline. So as we see them coming up and we start scoping, which is kind of a 2-year process, we scope them further out because of programming the funds and the work program. But when we start looking at what's coming, that's when we start to talk to our local agency partners in terms of which projects they think would be appropriate for a coalition. You know, we want these coalitions to be ones that the community is very passionate about. That would need that extra engagement to make sure that we're, having solutions that would be appropriate out there. Something like that would be, talking to myself or the management team in the Plimo office.
And just a follow-up to that, is there any advantages coming out of the coalition that more of the additional safety features included in a resurfacing project would be more eligible for additional funding? Because there's a lot of pieces and parts of this that are local preference, or maybe in our local comprehensive plans that are typically done with local partnership funding. Does this process make more funds available from FDOT, or do you still kind of land in the same place with what's eligible for DOT funding and what agency partners have to provide?
We're still using our resurfacing dollars, and we do have to be selective again with our coalitions where we're going to put more robust safety in some of the projects. So, it is balancing our funding, but with a lot of items here even are DOT will install, locals will maintain. So there is that agreement up front that some of the things we're showing would require, the locals to contribute some funding.
Kelly?
Couple questions. So I'm sorry, I might have missed it. What was your target speed in the alternatives?
We're keeping it as is 30, 25
I
through
thought
the
I saw a
curves.
lot of 25s in your graphic there at both ends.
That's something that we're working through right now. And the 30 is kind of this week we've landed on in the straightaways.
And then what did you do? What's the typical lane width in your alternatives?
So generally, it's all over the place, really. There's still 11s, but when we have to have a feature such as a master arm, we will have to narrow down to 10. I don't believe we're going to be proposing any of the 9-foots that aren't already existing.
So did you seriously consider using 10-foot consistently?
It mostly we may not be doing that because of moving the curb lines more expensive.
Okay, but moving the curb line is an opportunity to widen the sidewalk.
Right.
And
Well,
so is your constraint right away, or is it that you don't have money to move the curb line to do the sidewalk?
It's both sides. We're constrained both ways. There is the underground drainage structures that are more cost prohibitive to move with the resurfacing projects funding.
But there is potential you could even just use striping to stripe 10-foot lanes. I just want to throw out there. I think there are recommendations on, especially if you're trying 30 miles per hour or less, having greater than 10-foot lanes. 10-foot lanes are a traffic calming feature. So if you're really trying to achieve that target speed.
It is through a lot of it, the 10.
Any other questions? I do have just a follow-up question to Aaron's in regards to the kind of the difference between the 3R and the coalition. Would it be then, and I guess probably this is a good example, was it determined that it was coalition prior to scoping and coordinating with the local municipalities, or was it kind of mid-scope, or as far as the timing?
This year and last year were kind of off because of how we were incorporating smart scopes, but that identification ideally you would do in the scoping process in those visioning meetings or before, knowing that we just have to know that there's a 3R coming, because that's that major advantage of these type of projects is that we pair them with a known resurfacing project. So the coalition's that study phase, planning phase before the design of the 3R and construction.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And what you mentioned early in your presentation, I'm excited to hear that even the 3R projects are including the safety features, and I'm looking forward to working with FDOT and our upcoming projects.
Yep.
So-
Yeah, like coalition or not, safety features are getting put into those 3Rs.
Absolutely. Thank you. We have no other questions. Thank you for your presentation, Mark.
All right, thank you.
And we'll now move on to item 6, public comments on action items. We will now hear public comments on action items. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record, and please hold your comments to 2 minutes or less. If any members of the public wish to comment and are joining us virtually, please raise your hand. Please use the raise hand function and you'll be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll send you a prompt to unmute your mic. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment?
I'm looking on the virtual side and at this time, no hands have been raised.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any members of the public attending in person who wish to make a public comment?
I have not received any comments.
And are there any written comments that were submitted before the meeting?
We've not received any.
All right, thank you. Then we will go ahead and move on to action items. The first one is approval of the May 19th, 2023 TAC meeting minutes. Can be found in tab 1 of your agenda. Our first item is approval. Yeah. And so do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the May minutes, Ramon Centerins.
And do I have a second?
Second, Shad Smith.
And is there any discussion?
Oh, was I for the May one, it said I was absent and I was present for that one, so if we can just amend that.
Okay. So are we okay with changing the motions? Was that change?
Amend the motion with the amendment of adding, who was that? Alyssa being present to the meeting.
I accept it. Yeah, that's the second.
Great. With that, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? All right, motion passes. And moving on to the next item is the Transportation Improvement Program. Jason Sorrento from Metroplan Orlando is here to tell us more about that.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. This morning I'll be presenting on the fiscal year 2023, 2024 to fiscal year 2027, 2028 draft tip for adoption. And additional information regarding this amendment or regarding this document is located in your agenda packets. A little background on the tip. The tip identifies all federal and state funded transportation projects for the next 5 years. Includes locally funded projects and Central Florida Expressway projects for informational purposes, and it is updated on an annual basis. Within the tip, we have 11 sections, and since the draft presentation, Central Florida Expressway Authority projects have been added to the toll roads section of the tip. This brings our total projects to 526 within the 11 sections of the tip. So as you can see, we have a lot going on in the region over the next 5 years. We have a total of 312 federal, state, and turnpike funded projects with an estimated $4.1 billion in funding. And based on our region's significant population size, we receive additional federal funds, which we can use for off-system state highway system projects. And within the tip, we have 49 Metroplan Orlando funded projects with an estimated $147 million in funding. And the graph on the left side of the slide breaks this down by category. On June 21st, 2023, we hosted a virtual public meeting on Zoom from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. We had 129 people register, 62 participants, and in addition, we had 102 views of the tip meeting recording posted to our YouTube channel. And similar to prior years, we are expecting this number to increase as people have the time to view the video. Some comments and questions we received regarding transit needs in the region, desire to connect trail networks, bicycle and pedestrian safety, and Orange County and City of Orlando specific projects. And we also received feedback from Osceola County, City of Castleberry, and City of Longwood, and their input has been added into the document. With that being said, unless there are any questions, we are asking for your recommendation of approval of the fiscal year 2023-24 to fiscal year 2027-2028 tip. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Do I have a motion to recommend approval of the tip for fiscal years 23-24 through 2027-28?
I'll move to approve. Coulon.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? All right, motion passes unanimously. And moving on to the next item on the agenda is the prioritized project list, can be found in tab 3. And the annual update to the PPL, Slade Downs from Metro Plan Orlando is here to tell us more about that.
Great, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Good morning again, everyone. I'll be walking you through the final edition of this year's prioritized project list for adoption. A quick recap on the ins and outs of the PPL. This plan is updated annually. It links projects from the 25-year Metropolitan Transportation Plan to the 5-year Transportation Improvement Program, which you just heard about. The TIP focuses on the upcoming 5 years, and the PPL focuses on the decade following the TIP. So these are the funding programs and priority lists listed in the PPL. Each has a detailed one sheet that gives you the full requirements and considerations for each of those programs, as well as a detailed project list table in the PPL. A PDF of the prioritized project list has been linked in your agendas this morning. So if anyone would like to reference that, feel free. So at our last meeting, I gave you a deep dive on the PPL and asked for input and feedback. We received questions from some of our partners and other committee members on the general PPL process, on the new critical sidewalk gaps list, and just more specific project questions in general. A good example, I gave Kelly a shout out at Tismo and give him another one here. He let us know about a project that had changed a bit, another project in Castleberry that they had completed independently. So we were able to remove and update those in the PPL. That was just an example of the kind of feedback that we got and we're looking for. And during the feedback round, kind of the bottom line of the feedback we got, there were no changes to project rankings from last year. So everything's set on that front. And with that, keeping it short and sweet today, I'm going to ask that you please recommend approval of the 2028 through 2038 prioritized project list, and hoping to bring that approval to the Metro Plan Orlando board very bright and early on July 12th at their meeting. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Slade. Do I have a motion to recommend approval of the PPL for fiscal years 2028 through 2038?
Motion to approve, O'Keefe. Kane, second. Castro.
I think Kane beat you to that. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? All right, motion passes unanimously. And moving on to item 8 is the TAC only presentations. We now have 2 TAC only presentations. Please stand your nameplates on end to signal that you wish to ask a question, and we will recognize you at the end. The first presentation is Metro Plan Orlando's TSMNO Master Plan Status Update by Eric Hill, Metro Plan Orlando.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is an update on our Tismo Master Plan. And for, I don't know how many new folks we have on this committee, but Tismo is use of technology and innovation to improve mobility and safety. We have Jim Woods with us this morning. He is the consultant that's working on this study for us at Kimley Horn. And before I get going, I just want to regale you real quick. This is a book I read over a year ago on technology advancements in transportation. And there are several lessons in this manuscript, but just three I want to share with you this morning. First one is starting with the 1939 World's Fair. We have been showing self-driving cars as part of our future. And it was always 20 years away. And we had other World's Fairs where we had these exhibitions, and it was always 20 years away. So here we are now, and we're still talking about self-driving cars, and we're still talking about 20 years away. Now, in addition to some lessons I learned, this has helped curb my enthusiasm for technology and transportation. And many of you know that I'm an enthusiast of this, big fan. But it's kind of helped me pump my brakes a little bit for us to really understand what we're doing in this area. So are we still 20 years away from self-driving cars? I don't know. 10 years ago, I would have told you we were 5 years away, but I think we're still looking at that 20-year window. The other thing is, if you look at the amount of money that we have invested in technology and transportation over the last 20 years, it equals the amount that we spent on building the interstate system. So at least we got some roads, and we have this investment in technology, and what do we have? And that relates to the third point, and that is looking at the benefits that we're getting from these investments versus the impacts. Because while we're always promoting the benefits, mobility, safety, every other thing, there are going to be some impacts, and that's something that we really need to be mindful of. One that comes to mind is just equity. So with that story, let me go ahead and Mr. Chairman, I know you've been sitting for a while, so I'll move quickly. We have a steering committee. The steering committee's had 4 meetings. We have 2 left. We're on schedule to complete this study by September. These are the meetings that we've held. Again, the ones that we expect to have in the future. In the framework, this is where we are. We're at needs assessments, and that's what I'm going to brief you on this morning. But in the end, we want this work to roll into the next update of our metropolitan transportation plan. So that's the focus. So needs assessment, we've used our steering committee members to do this needs assessment. We've looked at existing conditions. We looked at the regional intelligent transportation system architecture. This is more of a federal requirement that we have to use in order to use federal funds to make these investments. And we've done stakeholder interviews. Through the interviews and this assessment, we've identified some gaps in current status, desired outcomes. And then we've broken them down into 3 categories, looking at recommendations in infrastructure and systems, strategies and operations, and agency and organization. Under infrastructure and systems, assessing system performance goes back to that last item that I learned from Panorama. Making sure that these systems work, the devices are functioning, which relates to the second one, traffic signals. We've done a lot with our traffic signal retiming program, but at some point we're going to tweak as much as we can out of that program. And so we need to start thinking about what we do next. In addition to that, we need to start thinking about what are the value we can get from traffic signal retiming. It's not about moving vehicles from end to end. That can't be the only objective. So we need to set some goals for this and what we truly want to get from it. Along with that is preemption and priority of vehicles. Most of this is focused on moving transit vehicles, making sure that they get back on schedule. But it's emergency management vehicles as well. And the nuance is on freight vehicles, getting freight vehicles to move. Transit technology, that's more in buses, but there's a lot outside that can happen. We want to promote, we look to our friends at Links for that. And then pedestrian bicycles. That's a safety concern. And a lot of the technology now is looking at how we can have our smartphones communicate with connected vehicles at intersections and crosswalks. Next few slides are just looking at gaps in fiber optics and intelligent or technology devices that are in the jurisdictions. This is Orange County. This is Osceola County, and you see the fiber where we see gaps in the fiber as well as the technology devices. Seminole County and the city of Orlando. Strategy and operations. One of the areas we want to focus on is project scoping, and this is more of what do you currently have deployed and how can you enhance that using technology. Again, the focus on performance and investments. Training is one of those areas that we had a presentation this morning at TISMO committee on resilience in TISMO. And it wasn't about the environment as much as it was about resiliency of your agency and your organization and your staff. So training is critical. Collaboration, we believe we do a lot of that with our TISMO committee already, along with interoperability. So there's some opportunities for us to learn from Seminole County that can be done in Osceola County. So we want to enhance that and take advantage of it. Agency and organization, again, that resiliency notion, when you think about that, you think more about the environment, but what's happening is our workforce starts to evolve. We have senior staff at a lot of agencies, and when they move on, how do we have that next line, that succession coming in? And building awareness. Again, the presentation this morning talked about how our leadership needs to recognize that after you make the capital investment, you have to make sure it works and you have to maintain it. So making our leadership aware that there are resources needed to maintain that. One of our next steps is looking at prioritizing these projects or recommended projects. And this is a draft criteria. Some of you that went through the MTP process may think this looks similar, and it does in a way, but we want to maintain some consistency, not all. But this is just a draft, and this will be the focus of our next steering committee meeting. So next steps, draft prioritization approach. Want to pilot that prioritization approach to make sure it works. And to develop some strategies. So our next meeting is August the 8th in this room at 1:30. And it's open, so if anyone would like to attend, you're more than welcome. Mr. Chairman, I tried to keep it, get you back on schedule because I know you've been sitting for a while. So, but I will respond to any questions or comments.
Thank you, Eric. Are there any questions for Eric on this?
Quick comment on the prioritization as you're moving into this phase of the master plan. Something I usually bring up with TIP and PPL is the relationship between the prioritization criteria, specifically safety, where we prioritize dangerous roads because of crash rates, and connecting that to the actual project component. For instance, we don't want to widen a road necessarily if it's already dangerous for active transportation users. So as you're moving into this phase, really be thinking about that connection between how do you assess prioritizing dangerous roads with what the actual project is to address that dangerous condition.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your comment. And one of the things we are doing is we are aligning this work with the work of our active transportation plan. To address that concern.
Any other questions? All right. Not well, thank you, Eric, for the presentation. And we'll move on to the last technically presentation, which is the functional classification status update by Jason Learned with the FDOT.
Thank you for the kind words at the beginning. It was great working with Osceola County, and I'm glad it was very productive. And DOT, we're very happy to have provided guidance and information and service to you all. So I'll start county by county, and I guess we'll start with Osceola. As the chairman mentioned, we had a workshop with them to address all of the comments that Osceola County had. And we were able to resolve all of those. And we are in the process of drafting the maps for Osceola County so that they can review. Orange County, we have had a bit of a break with Renzo being on vacation. He was out of the country, and I believe is he back? All right, so we will be starting again working with Orange County. We did have some good sessions with the city of Orlando and addressing their comments, as well as the city of Apopka. Winter Park made the comment that they have no comments. And that is really the only comments we've received from the municipalities within Orange County. In Seminole County, we've received comments from Longwood, which we're still trying to address, Altamont Springs, which we're still trying to address. The biggest hurdle has come from Seminole County itself. Originally, county engineering reviewed and was fine with all of our comments, but the information was relayed to Commissioner Delary, who seems to be fundamentally opposed to any functional classification changes on county-owned and maintained roadways. So we are trying to develop a strategy on how we want to address these issues with Seminole County. And it may also affect some of the cities because there are county maintained roads within city limits, and several of the roads I can think of that we propose to change from local to a collector were within the city of Winter Springs, and they're scattered all across the county, but mostly in Winter Springs and Oviedo. So there needs to be some coordination with Seminole County as well as the municipalities, so we can come to agreement with any conflict that may arise. So that is it in a nutshell where we are. And because of our, we've changed our schedule a bit. We were originally wanting to get this approved and finalized by July. But with the issues that have come up with Seminole County, and as well as needing additional time with Orange County, we have pushed back, and we are wanting to receive approval in September. So that's where we are with the schedule. So if anyone has not made any comments yet, there is still time, because the comment time can be extended. So, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Jason. Are there any questions or comments?
John George, I just want to clarify something about Seminole County. We still now briefing and working with the board. But we had a discussion with you and your team about a few weeks ago. This is not the final decision yet, what we gave you. And we're working with the commissioner, and we will be coming back to you with all our comment and recommendation from Seminole County. I just want to make sure everybody understand.
Oh, yes.
It is we have no final decision yet, but we ask you to postpone it because to have that opportunity, the discussion with all the commissioner, and so we can give you a final recommendation. I do appreciate that you postponed that decision.
No, thank you. And I sure hope I didn't imply that it was a final decision. It's
No,
far from not, yeah.
I just wanted to.
So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No. All right.
So if we had something else we wanted to change, we now still have time?
That is correct.
Okay, excellent. You might be hearing from me.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we will be reaching out to you because we still haven't processed your city's comments yet. So.
Any other final questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you, Jason, for the presentation and update.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Yeah, next item on the agenda is general information. There are several items under the general information tab 4 on your agenda packets. And then upcoming meetings of interest. Our next TAC meeting will be held in person on Friday, August 25th, 2023. And the next Metro Plan Orlando Board meeting will be held in person Wednesday, July 12th at 2023. And as a reminder, the meeting starts at 8. So as Slade had promised, there'll be plenty of coffee. And at this time, do any committee members want to make any final comments? Seeing none, public comments. If any members of the public wish to comment and are joining us virtually, please use the raise hand function when you'll be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll send you a prompt to unmute your mic. After you're recognized, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comment to 2 minutes or less. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment?
There are no hands raised on the virtual side.
All right. Do we have any members of the public attending in person who wish to make a public comment?
We have received a comment from Mr. Ben Robinson.
I'm a resident of Winter Park, and I am a part of the Fix 426 Coalition. It was mentioned earlier by Mark and Mr. Bluen. I wanted to speak for just a few moments to describe this coalition, how it's been involved in the project visioning team, and also to request that State Road 436 from I-4 all the way to the 417 be prioritized as a project in desperate need of safety improvements. The area of study that FDOT has been looking at in reaction to our groundswell of support is about 1 mile. There have been calls in our meetings for safety improvements so that we can avoid fatalities. Even in the last month or so, just slightly outside of this one area, this 1 mile area being studied, we've had a young man who my children play baseball with at Winter Park Babe Ruth, who was killed crossing State Road 426 to get to Jeremiah's, and that's unacceptable. The reason I'm here is to clarify our requests so that we are considered for that prioritized project list that was mentioned earlier. My advocacy on this topic began around 2015 when my youngest was one year old. It really came to a head in 2017. So that's 5 years that it's taken me to understand this process to get here. What I'm asking is on behalf of roughly 700 signatories of the Fix 426 petition, which in a community of about 12,000 families is pretty substantial, that this area continued to be studied in coordination with FDOT, and that the safety improvements that the community has asked to be prioritized are considered in conjunction with the safety improvements suggested by FDOT. 426, or I should say, Fix 426 is a group of interested citizens within Winter Park, Maitland, Eatonville, that believe this stretch of road can be better for motorists. It can be better for pedestrians, for cyclists, and can stimulate economic opportunity. It can help to improve multimodal safe transportation between Eatonville, Maitland, connecting campuses like Rollins, Valencia College, and stimulating economic activity. I'd like to just include some of the comments, which I won't read here, but would ask to be included in the record that have been submitted through our website and database, detailing satisfaction and dissatisfaction with the road. We think this is a dangerous stretch, and I want to just speak for a quick second about the resurfacing effort.
If I may, I
Yes.
apologize, just, we are up against the public comment time limits. If you could, just start wrapping up. This one.
Oh, sure.
Our
Yeah,
little-
I could-
we normally have a little alert ding, but it's muted right now, so
Okay.
thank you.
I'll wrap it up as follows. This began with a resurfacing initiative that the residents learned of. It would turn a crash up derby experience into a Formula One track. It's already experiencing speeds of 80 to 90 miles an hour. And the resurfacing effort is the first step of what needs to be many to improve this stretch of road. And I'm happy to answer any questions on behalf of the coalition Fix 426. But I'd also like the community's comments to be included in the meeting minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
And also, if I could catch you after the meeting, so I could get a digital copy of those comments. Thank you.
All right, and are there any other written comments that were submitted before the meeting? Slade?
No written comments received.
All right. And if there is no further business, we'll stand the meeting adjourned and we'll call it 11:40.
Josh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I
Oh.
just wanted to make an announcement and I didn't chime in quick enough when you went to members. I wanted to mention that the city of St. Cloud was a recipient of the RAISE planning grant funding. This is a project that came out of the corridor studies that were pursued with MetroPlan's leadership. And I just wanted to say thank you to MetroPlan for your support of that project. That planning project, or the corridor study project, determined that there was some stormwater issues in the corridor that couldn't be resolved within the existing right of way, and we needed to go back to a PD&E phase instead of going straight into design. So we were lucky enough to be a recipient of funding for the entire stretch of that corridor from US 192 to Narcoossee, about a 4-mile stretch. So we'll be moving into that soon. And I wanted to say thanks to MetroPlan for initiating that and the county for supporting us in that application.
Thank you. And we stand adjourned.